Now we have interpretation. I choose Ukrainian. And now you have to see the option for interpretation. Is all right. If you don't need interpretation, hope you don't see. All right. Now we have resolved this technical issue. I agree to you. I agree to you. And we'll be dealing with a super important issue. And who this discussion and several additional discussions that we'll have within between February and April is possible due to the financing of the European Union, due to the financing of the project, the emergency support of civil society and media in response to the war in Ukraine. And this super topical topic was lending prior to the war, and the role of lending in the economic development of Ukraine was on the agenda of a lot of discussion. But with no significant effect of all these discussions. However, these discussions, formulation of stands was the first step that will allow us to go forward and to formulate some decisions that will be acceptable for business and the government, as well as today. You'll be exposed to the research of Vitaly Kravchuk, the senior research fellow of IED, and I hope that his presentation will stimulate your opinions, critiques, alternative proposal. And later we'll invite the speakers, Mr. Lepeshinsky from the NBU, and then we have several other planned presentations, but this will be followed up by the open discussion, and I ask you either to write in the comments or show the hand up and and be active in the discussion, because here we are not to inform you about the research or to listen to regulator, but we all want to win the war and to use resources in the most effective way and rebuild our society as the affluent society. Vitaly, the floor is yours. Vitaly, we can see presentation but cannot hear you. I will see. We'll start. Can you go into Ukrainian language, Vitaly? Now we hear you. I'm in the Ukrainian channel. It's very good to come come together. And now we'll talk about the assessment of impact of lending for the economy of Ukraine. It won't be a very long presentation. It's based on the work that our research that we recently presented on assessment of impact of lending for the growth of economy in Ukraine. This work and this has the three major portions. What for? What the literature is talking about that. Second is how the analysis was performed and the findings. Why? the research was initiated. After in the follow-up of Russian aggression, our economy plummeted. And the lending shrank significantly, and a renewal of lending will be the major driving force, potential, and we can see some progress these days. And the credit portfolio is expanding, but it's too far from the pre-war levels. And actually, we need to have some calculation to prove that renewal of lending can make additional contribution to the economic growth. Unfortunately, there are lack of this data, but we can actually follow the connection between these two events. Trends. What the literature tells them. The lending can demonstrate a credit boom that can actually entail a financial crisis. And on the other hand, in those countries where with a lack of credit resources and with lower levels of economic development, and actually demonstrate growth of financial intermediaries, and the positive connection exists in those countries. So the base method was the IMF work of 2015. In the emerging markets, this can be a propeller of growth, and there was the panel of the countries, including these neighbors of similar economies, similar Ukraine, and showed that lending has positive effect for those countries, and this in this sample of countries that you can see, as well as for this specific time frame. We actually made an attempt to expand this approach and include calculations on the basis of the recent data for the 2022 for the period between 2012-22, and including the countries that whose economies are similar to ours. These are part of our neighbors and members of EU, but some of the countries are not members of the European Union, like Turkey, or Albania. And why we believe that we found certain answers, because we were looking separately at the contribution of corporate granting and computer standing. And we looked how they boosted consumption and investment. We were using several hundred of observations. If we could look only at the data in Ukraine, but it won't be that illustrative, because we actually had these huge fluctuations in economy prior to aggression and the post-aggression times. We use the several other range of variables and made use quarter and annual growth rates, and used two-stage least squares method. because we used the data from different countries, they were real sets. We have a broader indicator for the EU countries that includes that we can have from the national accounts in the EU, and uh, they provide data about consumer lending and lending from regardless the sources. But as in the other countries, the data were fed from the micro level, that is financials of corporates. No sound. We lost Vitali for a second. Ho Hope that the internet will be back. No, sorry for our technical perhaps problems. Vitali is lost. While Vitaly is renewing his access to the internet, hope it won't be for too long. I would like to say what will be our further movement, but it seems to be that as soon as Vitaly completes the presentation, and then we'll have open discussion. We have the set of issues that was distributed. I mean, the role of donors in involvement, internal credit resources. We suggest to discuss whether we need some adjustments in the legal provisions, management of risk to expand lending innovation in the financial center. And the colleagues also raised the question whether lending is possible in general at the time of war. And is actually the credit resource the very resource for renewal of the country. While if Vitaly shouldn't join us, then we will put the presentation to the end. But I hope that Vitaly, are you here? I can see you in the list, yeah? But we cannot hear you. We definitely share this presentation with all the participants, and it will be forwarded to you. We cannot hear you, Vitaly. And now, maybe you need to choose Ukrainian. It's interesting. Can you sound? I have chosen Ukrainian. It's all right now. Everybody can hear you. Let's try to share presentation on the screen. Sorry for these problems, but I'm working on the mobile internet because I have internet landline internet problems. I'm working on the mobile internet. But coming back to our findings. On corporate lending. In the co-work it was demonstrated the clear link between lending and investment. But my calculation showed that they didn't show the positive results for the it does mean that for this sample of countries didn't have it, but perhaps my methodological approach didn't provide the result. That's why I believe we have to go to work further. But this time I couldn't get some useful further. My work didn't provide some on corporate lending, a positive outcome. But as to consumer lending, no, we received positive findings, but actually it met our expectations, and the coverage was similar to the base, to our base research. And we can say that there is the positive connection between the growth of the household lending and growth of consumer consumption, private consumption. That actually is expected to make the positive impact. It's not a guaranteed result because it's the limited number of countries, but we did find this the link with one private component, but again we didn't find the confirmation that it impacts the capital investment. Okay, but we cannot overlook the risk of negative impact of consumer lending for capital investments. However, we actually can carefully say that under other equal conditions, private consumption could contribute to economic growth. As far as the corporate lending result, we're missing it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. We need to work further. But if it's certainly could be good to get timely data from the State Statistics Service. It's important not only for Ukraine per se, but also for the outsiders that try to account for this data. The World Bank also defined the weak connection between lending and investment, and they say their findings said that in the previous decades, there was actually the relationship between the growth of lending and investment in the fixed assets. But starting with 2010, this connection weakened, and but there was no correlation between the credit boom and spikes in investments. So the World Bank did not provide clear answer to this event, but there is a fact that was demonstrated. And it might be good to have additional data to actually investigate the clear impact between the lending, the corporate lending, and fixed assets investment. It may happen that microdata is the good approach because we have the credit register of NBU. and financials of enterprises are disclosed regularly. And that might provide additional data to what was traditionally used. Unfortunately, the quality of financials sometimes wishes to be desired, but it's but if we speak about the clear result of consumer lending, it's not all the research, specifically in the countries that the more developed economies in the Western Europe and G7, their consumer lending doesn't give the positive impact on growth. On the other side, some of the researchers showed positive finding. But for our sample and for our time frame of the last 10 years, it's worth to look at consumer lending as a factor of economy renewal. I'm afraid we lost Vitaly again. However, in fact, he almost completed the presentation, and we can move to the further to the findings of this research. This particular research didn't demonstrate statistically significant connection between the rates of growth of corporate lending and economic development through investment into fixed while the consumer lending demonstrated positive impact, first of all, for consumer consumption, and thus for economic growth. I would like come back to our discussion to the comments, and I would really appreciate your thoughts and visions. And I invite now, first of all, Volodymyr Lepushinsky, who is director of the Department for Monetary Policy and the economic analysis. We also, I also invite Mr. Gapon, Executive Director of Fund Entrepreneurship Development Fund, Mr. Glinsky, Acting Executive Director of Independent Association of Ukrainian Banking, Mr. Dubagris, and Mr. Rojo from Expert Credit Agency. I'm open for the comments and discussions as well. The variety of our participants are actually related to lending this or other way, and we'll see with how time it goes. Vladimir will get up to 10 minutes. And the overall narrative will be, is lending possible in the war, and what its will be role. Mr. Lepushinsky, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. And again, whether lending is possible at the wartime, we can see already that it is possible because we have well capitalized and operating and liquid banking system, and it demonstrates how important to have these qualities at these very difficult times. And at the beginning, our task was first of all to retain settlements in the economy, and now banking system starts already lending again, and the economy is on the upper trend. We for the last year, the GDP growth exceeded 5%, 5.7, and we keep this rate of renewal this year. And for acceleration, both investment and loans are needed. And we couldn't see the exact proof for in this research, but I think will be, if you look forward, we'll see the specific lending accelerator that will provide us to assess broadly its contribution. And renewal of lending is based on of the decreased level of uncertainty and macrofinancial stability. We can see the sustainable the level of the foreign currency market, and at the with the background of renewal of economy, lending is expanding, and all in all, in the last year, the trend to the growth was specific to the second half of the year. It was growth by 7.7%. It's and in corporate lending, and the individuals also increased their lending. Banks are optimistic with respect to the expanding the lending recently. The recent survey in the banks showed that banks are oriented at growth in corporate lending. The level of approval of requests for corporate lending is also growing, for mostly in the sector of SMEs. And it's very positive because for this sector, financing is the most painful issue. We can see the upsurge of demand for loans. So that means the progress is on both sides, demand and supply. The National Bank of Ukraine keeps on working on I can inside and the basis for development. And very soon we'll launch the expert discussion of this new document of NBU. And we would like for the strategy for development of lending help to support both the activities at the time of war and the stage of renewal. But with perhaps the focus on lending will be different. If we see in terms of support, the first of all, the focus on an energy sustainable logistics, the military and industrial complex, renewal of economic activities in the occupied territories. But in the post-war period, a renewal will be more related to improvement of investment and consumer expectations, and the growth of demand for loans, and in the structure of interest rates, and as well as the positive decisions, the mitigation of security risk will largely impact. And there will be topical issues that were topical prior to aggression, optimization of exchange of information at the lending market, increase of the legal protection for the parties in lending, and that actually should contribute to plummeting the risks and raising the certainty of both the borrowers and creditors. And now I would like to stop here and thank you for attention. Thank you very much. Uh, I have immediate issue while you were talking. You mentioned that the level of uncertainty is going down. However, the year of 2024 is very complicated in terms of international relations, and our international stability is linked to our role as beneficiaries of the international grants. We have the decision of the European Union that unfortunately will not cover all our needs. But what if this depend? If we fail in getting all the expected funding, what will happen? If we speak about the lower level of uncertainty, I speak in terms of the micro financial stability that we could ensure. But it's also important the adequate response of at the government level. I speak about NBU, I mean our responses. Institutional response, but will be appropriately responding to our challenges. We could look at 22 and 23, regardless any challenges. We actually it was possible to support macro-financial stability. So I speak about two institutions, NBU and the Ministry of Finance, first of all. And regardless the fact that there were huge budget demands, last year we have lived without inflationary and currently we get prepared to the various scenarios of developments of. There are no simple solutions under these conditions. The available it's the issue of available resources to cover the needs. First of all, it's support of our military capacities. And here, these both monetary policies and systemic policies will play in effect. There are a lot of options, but we'll first activate those options that on one hand are characterized by low risk of destabilization. I mean, securing microfinancial stability will be a priority. But on the other hand, will do what is necessary. Just redistribution of the limited Ukrainian resource for the purposes of supporting its military capacity. You're right. So we have gone through year 2022, and we are now expanding our understanding what are the ways to support macroeconomic stability. And I hope that our partners will support us, and we won't have a need in option B and so on. And I believe that the next issue will be about the interest rate. What's your vision for the interest rate situation? Here there is the we face interrelated process, because to have the low interest rate for loans, we need to have the low rate for deposits. And for that, we need to deal with lower inflationary expectations. We are making slow steps on this path. Inflation currently is about 5%, but our inflation expectations remain higher, and regardless the fact they improved, and that allowed the NBU last year earlier than it was forecasted to start reduction of interest rates. It was the response on behalf of lending rates. And we can see that this year there is still room for decrease, for the further decrease in interest rates. We expect that we'll see this effect in the second half of the year, but still we deal with risks that limit this room for the decrease in rates without destabilization of the monetary sector. We need to retain stability because it will, first of all, the basis for sustainable renewal. We are not talking about a spike, but we expect the process that is sustainable and continues. That is why interest rates now are lower than they were a year ago. And we can see the room for further decrease on the condition of sustaining the retaining macrofinancial stability. It's understandable that the driver at this stage when we needed to support relatively high rates, they were government programs that actually demonstrated their efficiency because they supported this credit impulse as well. But currently we can say that their volume and coverage has gone both up and wide, and we actually had resources for coverage, and this program should be the driver of lending. They need sharper focus, and that's actually stipulated as an item with our relationship with International Monetary Fund. Thank you very much for your comment, and I have also a couple of questions. One is definitely to the NBU. And I still invite speakers to provide your answer to. In the chat, we have questions. What mechanisms for lending of municipalities, and about the shrinking the deposit programs, and what is happening in this domain. Thank you for these questions. First of all, for lending to local self-government. This practice is possible, but I'm not sure that loans is what an instrument. Loan is an instrument that local budget is needed. We face the profit in the local budgets. They accumulate sufficient liquidity at their treasury accounts, and this happens regardless of this certain redistribution of the individual tax of the military personnel, and I cannot see the need, to my mind, because this is not that acute issue, accounting for the fact of availability of resources at the local level. As to the volume of deposits, I couldn't grasp what time frame we mean. I can actually specify. The data says that the decrease is 20 22 plus billion that the decrease in deposit. Yes, really, in January we faced a certain plummeting. But this is a seasonal effect because when in December there are a lot of payouts at the end of the year. I mean salaries and the December is concentrated in is specific for inflow of resources, and certainly deposits are growing in deposits, and in January. These funds go to the legal entities accounts, but in February, statistics shows that deposits are going up again. Regardless the fact that really in this volume denominated term deposits denominated in hryvnia is going up, and that is a positive signal for the belief in the system, for the trust in the system. I would like to invite Mr. Andrei Gapon, who is the executive director of the Entrepreneurship Development Fund. He may touch upon the another aspect of lending and what should be done. Yeah, I cannot hear Mr. Gapon. Can you put it into Ukrainian, please? The participants can hear you. Yeah. Then I will move to the Ukrainian language. Thank you for inviting me. I won't be speaking on the other side than the previous speaker because I believe that we are doing the same thing. We boost the lending in Ukraine. I am a representative of Entrepreneurship Fund because we administrate the most, the scale of programs that 579, and we also launched the programs of factoring and leasing that we launched also at the end of last year. Renewal of lending it has the two levels of issues in simple when they simplify. So what is on the way to get loan for the enterprise? First of all, war risks that will never disappear at the time of war, and lack of collateral. There are two major prerequisites for slower rates of lending compared to the pre-war. Herewith, I would like to say that if we compare 22 and 23 year, the program 579 allowed access to the bank lending in the banking system to every third loan in the past 2 years was issued in the framework of 579. It turned this way because the government decided to channel all the available resources earmarked to support SMEs for these 579 programs. As soon as the war outbroke in February 22. In such a way, the conditions and criteria of access to the program in 579 579 was actually initiated as investment program and targeted at SMEs. And this program faced a lot of challenges. And it involved, first of all, there was the program described, and there was we also supported liquidity of the the working capital. In 22, we the big business joined the program that was significantly making use of these programs to ensure liquidity of the big business. And we look of all of our credit, our authorized bank, only 14% are the investment loans, and the lion's share of the budget funds is allocated to support the working capital. Whether it's good or bad, I can say that we cannot say yes, just yes or no, because the conditions that of this program support of this of the business operations of the business actually could help their to pay taxes, and only this way the government gets the funds that are important for our defense. You know that all of the programs of international programs from foreign donors are focused on everything apart from defense. That's why all of the funds that come to Ukraine it's the exclusion list. We cannot finance our defense needs and defense industry. There are special programs for this, but the universal donor programs are targeted and SMEs, except for the war-related issues. The only way of the budget inflow, there are taxes of enterprises that could actually enjoy 579 programs. If we looked at the dynamics of our programs in 2022, the loan portfolio demonstrated for example, by 100 billion in 2023. So the growth is on the go, and I believe that we'll see these dynamics further on. I cannot hear. We have the vicious internet vicious circle. I cannot hear Mr. Hapon. Has everybody lost him? Yes. As something is happening in the various parts of the internet. While Mr. Andrei will join in, he mentioned that every third loan was issued in the framework of 579 program. Yes, you lost me, yeah? Now we regained you. Welcome back. You have a couple of minutes. But again, suspension of connection. Yes. Then I go on. Dynamic is certain, but it creates deficit. And herewith, the government is aware and tries to resolve this issue with less pain for the participants of the programs. And our fund expects the first tranche for 2024 at the level of 3 billion that will help us actually to cover our debt to the banks for the period between August and maybe the end of the year. I hope that in April we'll actually pay back the debt to the bank for the year 2023. However, it's an abnormal situation, and our IMF controllers and partners actually pointed out the big fiscal risks in the parameters of our program. And we are now on the way to formulate some adjustments that actually could correlate with budget expenses, and actually it could be make us possible to be within the budget funding for every fiscal year. And I understand the issue was about the international support decreasing, but I would like to say that that support that Ukraine received in 22-23 was not fully implemented. Even the agreements that concluded in 22-23 were not implemented in full. The simple example from 579, the program. The government really lacks funds to support SMEs in the framework of government programs, and donors supported us. In 22-23, 85% of all the budget financing was financed by KfW and the World Bank. And this year, this proportion may show decrease, but we still have the World Bank resources that will support for 579. This program that we are implementing now, it's transparent, and our partners understand it, and it is the instrument of investing funds in Ukraine, both through loans to the government as well as on the grant basis. That is actually, they serve the refinancing. Now, we had two international audits of our program that confirmed its transparent features, and that we hope that at every conference, every meeting with international donors, I reiterate that this is the way of financing Ukrainian business and support it, as it was done by the government of Germany and the World Bank through inflow of funds into the program 579. That this positive experience 22-23. I hope that other partners will join to this cohort and this this year. In a nutshell, that is for all, and I wanted to point out that the war risks issue and collateral are the two major issues. I hope that war risks will be resolved through the insurance of war risks. There are the programs from both our domestic sources and from the international ones. And due to a collateral issue, portfolio guarantees can become the prerequisite for entrepreneur to the either 50 or 80% is guaranteed of the principal of the loans to the bank and by the state. And actually, this is the support for the demand, and we bring together two government instruments for entrepreneur could get a loan that it needed to sustain business and develop it. It's important to mention that because blank lending is dead in Ukraine because it's very expensive for entrepreneurship. Prior to the war, associations of owners of apartments was active, but now it's dead as well. It's also related to war risks and lack of readiness of the banks to get engaged in the long-term programs. The government is working also and tries to create conditions for long-term lending also in the framework of Fives and Debit, because now we have investment credit terms up to 10 years, but not a single entrepreneurship or bank made use of this opportunity. Everybody is working in the short-term perspective. Some broader support may be needed by the states and by our foreign partners to set up really interesting projects implemented maybe jointly by a consortium of banks because otherwise it won't be working because of military war risks. This is the lending with through this 579 instrument. Thank you very much. There are no urgent questions, and I have already mentioned that I was impressed that not only third loan, but there were two there are loans that were not related to your program, not related to the government support, because not everybody is meeting criteria. We have a set of criteria, and now this will specify and narrow these criteria of eligibility. For example, the maximum limit of financing for related parties. This 60 million hryvnia was already used in the previous years. Maybe we'll get an additional specifications for the lending story, including the long-term lending and how to overcome the war risk. Mr. Glinsky, acting executive director of Independent Association of Ukrainian Bank, the floor is yours. I hope you can hear me and see. We hope for internet opera. Then I will start perhaps from the ending of the previous. For some time, we're talking already about risks and about the instruments of mitigation, mitigating this risk, what to do with the long-term lending. They are all interrelated issues, and the situations we are facing in lending today may look even optimistic with the background of the war, but not for 1 year, and the aggressor is the mighty one. It's parts of our Ukrainian miracle that happened due to very broad international support, as well as the professional moves of Ukrainian Ukrainian monetary policy. I won't enumerate what we did, but it worked. It worked out. We have lower inflation. Regardless the high inflationary expectation, that this is actually the anchor for the rates, and it's actually the stop. If inflation at the level 5 level, the loan interest rate could be within 12, but it's not realistic as of this date. But business expects exactly the rates that provides for their justice for their accumulation of solvency, that to say, how and high interest rates result in the loan demand is concentrated within the programs of government support. But situation is improving, and macroeconomic rate and creates the broader conditions of credit, and loan portfolios of banks are growing that we couldn't see at the beginning. And this process is will continue into the future, I believe. And in the nearest future, we'll face increase of loan demands, and banks will expand the issuance of loans. But whether it's sufficient level of lending, but banks the banks are actually lending the best borrower segments. If we speak in terms of business and population, the whole banks are limited because of risks. And if they have to make a choice, they can enter in and it's not the long-term agreements because of the war risks. Because long-term lending, it looks like gambling in the time of war. And it was starting with autumn last year. The various insurance schemes for insuring war risks. There are about 5 instruments financed by MEGA agency and several international agencies. Export credit agency can reinsure some risks as well. And I believe that we have a representative of export credit agency, and we'll hear about from him. And taming these risks results in expectations in further development of specialized lending, and the majority of borrowers cannot meet the criteria of eligibility. But the demand for these instruments is up and upward. And I also want to emphasize that it's natural that we concentrate on war risks. However, with this background, we forget about another set of limitations traditional to the pre-war time, and it still exists. And because first of all, it's the imperfection of Ukrainian law that actually supported the high risks of lending in Ukraine and put limits on the circle of borrowers. Then protection of rights of creditors in bankruptcies of borrowers, and there are some limitations for creditors that were actually introduced back in the 2019 pandemic. Now we also face limitations due to the martial law. And what is important here if we're talking about the wartime limitations, they will actually sustaining till the martial law is suspended. We don't know when the situation will be over, and we come to the point that when we need to reconsider prioritization. We need to intensify either we need to intensify lending or protect potential borrowers. And it will depend on the dynamic, on this very dynamics that will actually determine the further dynamics in lending. Will if it will be characterized of this higher dynamics, it may improve economic growth. For a number of years, I was following the research of international institutions, and this difficult access to financing was was difficult for expansion of business, and making loans affordable and accessible will actually accelerate uh, growth of the volumes in lending. It will actually remove one of the limitations for the growth of business, and thus growth of economy on the whole. Thank you. Uh, I'm sorry that I might limit you, but at this important point, that one hand, the easing the access, it's already the we is addressed to the to the states and with on the other hand, that this the issue was emphasized that other limitations, whether it can be removed without financing the growth is impossible, but availability of financing, unfortunately, the growth is not guaranteed because it's only in, and at this point, I would like to give the floor to advisor on the issues of banking finance in case of case Ukraine. I suggest to join. Is we also heard the answer that lending is but, possible, but whether it's the source of renewal. Thank you for the invitation. Sorry for unstable internet. I can be in and out. First of all, lending. What is lending? We see this or the other type of the uh, lending is a symptom what is happening in in a country. We can see uh, if something is actively growing, both in volumes and percentage, it's a risk. And it, it, Vladimir and Andrei presented the figures. Oh, these figures show that from from this 7%, we make minus of the program, the volume of 100 billion, and account for inflation, and also add restructuring, then we'll see the plummeting of lending, because there are at least 8 ways of calculating lending, and depending on methodology of calculation, we actually end up with a variety of figures, different figures. Lending in the full-fledged war, is the is very, very slow, not because we have some bad banks, but the war risks are very significant, and uncertainty is fluctuating. Yesterday it was less, but now it's much higher. And we cannot know what will happen in a month or two, and that is normal that apart from the government programs, our lending is not expanding. That's a hint that something should be done. But what can we do at this very stage? The issue of rates, but if somebody would like if we calculate, make some calculation, we can demonstrate that even the 15% of probability of borrowers, average borrowers default, this is 15% probability of default. Does we don't have the rates that would cover this 15% probability. And it's how we can actually mitigate the first. The distribution of risks is the first one. If we divide this risk between the variety of financial institutions and the may be given to portfolio guarantee to Ukrainian bank. A bank can give the guarantees to an agency, and this risk is redistributed between a number of participants. It can work at the level of the guarantees that were given to the financial corporation were given to the private banks when that our banks received, and insurers in the second way, insuring the collateral, war risks insurance, default insurance. These are the variety of complicated instruments. So guaranteeing, risk sharing, insurance. What else can be done? Making the regulatory demands and that were topical prior to the war, but are not topical these days. For example, high for example, lack of financial difficulties demands of so really some the things can be done, not maybe not, if not accelerate lending, but retain it at certain level. When I communicate with entrepreneurship, there are there are actually ways, and banks have resources, and banks have liquidity, banks are financially capable and sustainable. However, there are no rates that could cover risk without its distribution and mitigation. But if we come back to the question whether lending can promote economic growth, perhaps yes. But under condition of portfolio guarantees, for example, because if the risk can be distributed, and because it should be done. And I believe that this is the nearest way in the upcoming half a year to accelerate lending. I'm sorry for this messy speech. And thank you very much for the specific proposals, what can be done. And for both for the government, for the users, and those who are lobbying the changes. We have also the participant, but before I invite Mr. Rohoff, I would like to come to the questions in the chat, but it may be to Mr. Ruslan will be Taras Golub, who is the advisor of our European and Atlantic integration, Vice Prime Minister, we can see the first proposals from the national governments of Switzerland, of Finland. These programs are based on 57%. They're built on the procedure of export lending. And by the way, there are limited possibilities, and actually these programs involve government guarantees. Can these proposals be operational in Ukraine and cover the general needs? Ruslan and I will ask you to add the answer to this question. Much was said on the deep challenges in lending, and one of the reasons, one of the reasons was collateral, and we were actually, regardless the fact that we are export credit agency, but we are not lending. I would like to emphasize that this company was set up was not set up for lending. But our mission is to be the bridge between the banking sector and the borrowers, those that actually need resources to support their export contract. Export contract is in the focus of our activity. The law, on one hand, stimulates development of export, and on the other hand, it changes the specific weight towards the increase of the high added value, and there are a lot of limitations that we are not supporting exporters of the primary materials. We are not very new organizations. The previous parliament adopted the decision, and we are. But it took time to set up our institution. It took 2 years to set up institution, to recruit personnel, and then we also engaged in the progress of actually improving the regulatory issues. And the major issue was actually our statutory capital, because actually to cover risks, we need to have the resources for this, for risk coverage. We all, the Minister of Economy, the Parliament, the Parliament, NBU, and the government joined their efforts, and actually we now the insurance of our agency is recognized as a liquid collateral, and that stimulated the banks to resort to this type of collateral. Actually, 0.85. This is collateral for the loan, and through insuring a bank, we provide for the bank to mitigate, to actually to deflate the risks and for lending to exporters. In 22, we didn't have a high demand, but together with 579, we actually could finance about 30 contracts. In fact, with the only collateral as with our insurance, and with zero late, and a lot of the companies could upsurge. We had several cases at the micro level when the companies renewed their work because when they lost their working capital and could not support operate their credit crisis. But this contact with us could actually help them to renew their production, pay salaries, and this for example, the demand for furniture was plummeted, and these type of companies had either to close production or start exporting. And we have a success case from Rivne, where 30% they were supplied to the domestic market, but now they are exporting 50%, and they actually have 65% of exports to the EU countries. So that's first of all goes to the Ukraine, that supports Ukrainian produce going to the EU, European Union. Uh, in addition to ensuring lenders, we have not had bank guarantees. They even under bank guarantees, nobody wanted to ensure a bank guarantee because the advance payment to Ukrainian producers is not a popular move. But when the new markets and like Africa or Asia, we had a couple of with Ukrainian exporters where it was some Odessa company we covered their losses in the framework that from this insurance they took from our agency. The shrink of the economy and stimulation of export will add the situation in decrease of production. It's a difficult task, and we actually need to involve the long money for export-oriented production. And we need the legal support for that. In fact, it was a positive move when we could ensure political and war risks. It's similar to the ensuring risks from the losses from losses of and investment, ensuring investment of the bank loans for the EVCs. We are about to complete our capacity to ensure investment loans to avoid fear of the bank. If the 579 is making cheaper, cheaper lending, if 579 could provide in combination with to involve financing of corporate sector to actually set up new capacities for export-oriented production. There are certain difficulties because of the content of this draft law, but how the insurance from risk of non-repayment loans, working on loans, default on working capital loans. We'll see how the banks, first of all, to respond, and whether they can, bank will be eager to provide 3-5 years of long investment loans. If we have we actually have some expectations because we have conditional insurance and certain risks can we have the exhaustive list of the risks for our insurance. If the other risk provide a default, that's the bank will face non-repayment, and we expect discussion. And what we, if banks will were not very concentrated on this issue, that would made it possible to use the current draft law, but we already disclosed the exhaustive list that may be incorporated into the draft law that would provide the opening of long money, that to say, for investment programs. And should that be connected with cheaper loan, it might be both cheap and we could provide insurance. But now we are talking about the problems, but we need also to have demand. When we launch it, its investment, the big money will, and it will be big pressure on capital. And it's 1.7 billion. And now we have about 700 million, and we have billions that we can operate with, and we balance at this very level. And because we have this balancing within this, but these are the working capital. But if we deal with long money, and will be in fact invest all the capital in coverage of risks, and we take this risk, and we need the new capital. And here is the issue of for the government, whether will be receiving resources, for example, securities. At the moment of issuing, we had 2 billion in securities, and they, by the way, were evaluated and lost their value. But the challenge is that if the insurance case takes place, it's not a very liquid instrument, and we may face the technical default. And then the government has to take our risk on itself for this moment when we need to and or maybe the money should be involved, not securities. These or the other story is 100% of shares, the shares of the governments, and we can invite actually other countries or the institutions, MEGA, DFC, that could actually bring their money into our capital. That would allow us not only to grow capital, but actually that will provide them the internal reporting, and they might take the reinsuring risks. And that will allow us to take bank risks on ourselves. Thank you very much. This is another important aspect. And while you were talking, I was thinking that not only Ukrainian state should play its role, but we need the distribution of risks, and for the agency potential might be improved. Formally, we can complete our discussion. But there are several issues in addition. Or even I think to everybody will take another 10 minutes, but those who need to go, thank you for joining us, and I invite you for our further discussion. And Mr. Taras Golub, who is the advisor of Vice Prime Minister for European and Atlantic integration. Mr. Taras, the floor is yours. Thank you for these couple of words. I was not specifically ready for the speech, but I would like to say that, as you know, we are in the active process of Ukraine facility mechanism activation from the European Commission. There were last week several positive decisions were adopted for this with respect to this mechanism, and we expect its launching. But a lot of issues pop up on the programs that are prepared by EU members involved in this mechanism, what kind of their programs will face, and these several foreign companies and partners that are expect for operation of this mechanism, and find the ways to be positively involved into Ukrainian review. We see the first proposals from Finland, for example, and the government of Finland adopted the first part of program for renewal of Ukraine that should make use of this European Commission Ukraine facility. This program should make use the general mechanism from export credit agency of Finland, how it will be working. For example, we have the issue of building or renewal some, let's say, a bridge. There is a design for this bridge, and this program, according to this program and the framework, the Finnish government suggests the contractor from Finland, and this project will be financed 65 at the level of 65% from Finnish credit agency, and from 35% will be funding from the European Union through Ukraine facility. So export lending should be provided either to the contractor if the contractor is if it's sales credit, but in case of buyer's credit, SPU, who is the owner of the project. These costs related to technical support should be covered from the EU funds, and some technical support and launching of this project. And from the EU funds, there will be financial coverage of the project this through the export insuring, as well as the coverage of the interest. It will be zero rate lending. It's the preliminary proposals now. There is discussion, but we know how export lending was operating before the war. Before we faced the war risks, and generally speaking, export lending required, first of all, sovereign guarantees. Second, the procedure of export export lending, it's actually is in conflict with the procurement law. That's why the project needed ratification of the Verkhovna Rada. Should under current the needs and demand for big money, we have this frame of the project, we won't be able to use of these programs to cover all the huge demands. And here there will be, we need a dialogue for adapting this program, but Ukraine will need modernize the law to regulate, to improve regulation of export lending. That's why I had a question of NBU, whether they have this issue on their agenda, whether it is discussed. and how these procedures may be regulated at the level of NBU. Thank you very much. And I have one. Uh, uh, it will be perhaps Andrei and Volodymyr that our construction industry is frozen. But are there anything expected that these questions are now go to Vladimir and Andrei, and they might be the last questions. I should say that we see some acceleration of mortgage lending, increase in 20% increase compared to prior to the big war, including the activation of EOSELA as the government program. And currently, banking expect on this mortgage lending is very weak, and it's understandable. And perhaps here, the role for renewal might be involving some specialized programs. I don't have any ready-made answer, because we are talking about redistribution of resources that should be done, first of all, through the fiscal instruments, through the budget instruments, and we have a variety of priorities. And I'm in difficulty whether it can be financed and what be the volume of that financing. And the question that Taras raised, it's again, but the ball is at the government side, because we are talking in terms of the sovereign guarantees that are limited, and the budget codes and the IMF program and the state budget law are limiting this this move, and this it involves the adjustments in the law and the existing risks should be controlled by the state, and the mechanism should do that. But the issue is for the government to define priorities. Thank you very much. And Andrei, have you anything to add? As to the on the mortgage, we already mentioned the role of the EOSELA. As to the big loans that were issued to construction companies, I can say that even before actually the banks prior to the war, the banks that are very close, that to say, to the construction industry were issued. Currently 579 is actually targeted at Ukrainian builder that to say there is the limited of its limited financing, but I believe that to put all this burden on the government, it's too much. Maybe the search for other instruments to be used by our construction sector. And this, I never heard about specialized programs to support our construction industry. Thank you very much. There are a lot of priorities, a lot of sectors. And it's difficult to cover all the needs through the Ukrainian finances, but I believe in the huge potential and upsurge of construction industry, and because we are talking also in terms of physical construction due to the lot of destruction, and we're talking about the new infrastructure, about energy saving technologies, And I think that this construction sector will be on the go in the post-war time. And thanks very much for everybody for being with us. I will take an additional minute. And what my takeaway from this discussion, and maybe it will be good for you as well. First of all, lending is alive. It's developing. And it's sustainable within the banking system, because the reform of the banking sector prior to the war supported that. And it's a high important role of 579 program, but we're starting speaking more and more that we cannot actually making the demand of the budget thin. It's impossible, and there are limited resources, and we that is why the issue of the system of guarantees of insurance are becoming more and more topical. It was good to hear that we have 5 relevant instruments, but I remember from the previous discussion, all these instruments are actually not not that efficient when it creates it when they are in a pool for the purpose of balancing the risks. That's perhaps the key things that I heard. Thank you very much to the speakers, and thanks everybody who was with us, and we'll keep working on issues of macroeconomic analysis, lending, and renewal. Please get exposed to our products and be safe. Glory to the heroes. Thank you. Bye.